Raphael pushed the glass door of the village scribe cafe harder than he intended. The bell above the entrance chimed too loudly for that June Saturday night, making a few heads turn. He felt the heat rise up his neck, shoved his hands into the pockets of his dark jeans, and discreetly scanned for the woman Theo had described. Tall, brown hair, probably by the window. That was all his foreman and only friend had said before practically shoving him out of the woodshop that afternoon, with the smug grin of someone who had just done him a huge favor. A month of peace at work. That was Theo's promise if Raphael just showed up for the date for 1 hour. 60 minutes. Raphael could endure anything for 60 minutes, even a forced conversation with a stranger in a bustling Greenwich Village cafe. Then he saw her. Marina was sitting by the window overlooking Carmine Street, just as Theo had predicted. Her brown hair was pulled back in a low bun, a few loose strands framing her face as she gazed out at the street with a serene, almost distant expression. But that wasn't what made Raphael stop in his tracks between the door and her table. It was the black compact wheelchair, folded and leaning against the wall next to the regular chair where she sat. Raphael felt something tighten in his chest. It wasn't pity, not exactly. It was surprise mixed with a strange feeling of being caught off guard. Theo hadn't mentioned it, not a word. He stood there for a second too long, long enough for Marina to turn her head and their eyes to meet. Her eyes were dark and intense, watching him with a calmness that seemed to assess his every reaction, every micro-expression on his face. Raphael forced himself to move, walking to the table with steps that felt less coordinated than usual. "You must be Raphael," Marina said before he could speak, her voice holding a note of restrained amusement. "Let me guess. Tall, quiet, probably still has sawdust in his hair even after showering." Raphael automatically ran a hand through his hair, indeed feeling a few fine grains of wood. A reluctant smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. "Theo." "Theo," Marina confirmed, gesturing to the chair across from her. "You can sit. I won't bite." Raphael sat, his knees, nearly bumping the small table. He was too tall for this delicate cafe furniture. A waitress appeared almost immediately, as if she had been waiting for his arrival. Raphael ordered a black coffee, simple. Marina asked for a cappuccino with extra foam, using her right hand to gesture as she spoke to the waitress, who smiled and jotted down the order before disappearing. It was then that Raphael noticed the way Marina held the water glass already on the table, the fingers of her left hand slightly stiffer. The subtle but perceptible control she exerted over every movement. It wasn't obvious, not to someone who wasn't paying attention, but Raphael was a carpenter. He spent his days observing structures, angles, the right way to fit pieces that needed to bear weight and pressure. He noticed details. "So," Marina said, breaking the silence that was beginning to form. "Theo told me you build houses, wood frames specifically." "Frames," Raphael confirmed, grateful for something concrete to talk about. "Beams, rafters, the skeleton of the building. The part no one sees when the house is finished. The important part," Marina observed. "The part that holds everything up." Raphael nodded, surprised. Most people didn't get that. To them, construction was about finishes, paint, decoration. No one thought about the beams holding the roof over their heads. "And you?" he asked, his voice coming out softer than he'd intended. "Theo said you work with art." "Illustration," Marina corrected. "Children's books, mostly." She pulled a slim tablet from the bag beside her chair, swiping her fingers across the screen with precise movements. "Look, I'm working on this series now. A fox who lives in the big city and doesn't fit in anywhere." She turned the screen to Raphael. The illustration was beautiful, with delicate yet expressive lines and vibrant colors. The fox had large, sad eyes, sitting alone on a park bench while other animals passed by without noticing it. "It's beautiful," Raphael said, and he meant it. "Sad, but beautiful." "Life is like that sometimes," Marina replied, putting the tablet away. "Sad and beautiful at the same time." She took a sip of the cappuccino the waitress had brought, while Raphael was looking at the drawing. "Digital is easier, especially with one good hand." It was said lightly, almost like an observation about the weather, but Raphael felt the weight behind the words. She was testing him, waiting to see if he would ask an invasive question or offer a condescending comment. Raphael took a sip of his own coffee before answering. I work a lot with precision. One wrong measurement, one bad cut, and the whole structure can be compromised. I imagine illustration is similar. Every line has to be in the right place. Marina studied him for a long moment, her cup suspended in the air between them. Exactly, she said finally, and something in her tone had changed. It was softer, less defensive. Every line matters. They talked for longer about things, both small and large at the same time. Raphael spoke of the satisfaction of seeing a frame he had built become something solid and permanent. Marina talked about the children who read her books, about the letters she received from parents saying her illustrations helped their kids understand complicated feelings. The cafe was fuller now, the buzz of conversations around them creating a sort of private bubble. Raphael realized he had relaxed. His shoulders were no longer tense, his hands no longer hidden in his pockets. Marina was laughing at something he'd said about Theo trying to assemble a bookshelf, using only intuition and 3 nails. When the silence returned, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence 2 people share when they don't feel the need to fill every second with words. Raphael looked out the window, watching the streetlights come on one by one as evening fell over Greenwich Village. You can ask, Marina said suddenly, about the obvious. I know you're wondering. Raphael looked back at her. I wasn't, he said honestly. I was wondering something else. Marina raised an eyebrow. What? If you were going to ask me out for another coffee, because I don't need a reason to stay for this one, but I'd need a reason to be invited to the next one. Marina blinked, clearly caught off guard. Then a genuine laugh escaped her lips, the kind that makes the corners of your eyes crinkle. Raphael felt something warm spread through his chest. All right, Marina said when she stopped laughing. I'll tell you, but only because you didn't ask the way everyone else does. She adjusted her cup on the table, her fingers tracing the rim. It was 4 years ago, a car accident I was on my way to. An exhibition at a gallery in Soho. It was raining hard. A truck lost control. I was in a coma for 2 weeks. When I woke up, my legs didn't work anymore. Raphael listened without interrupting, without making expressions of pity or shock. He just listened, his eyes fixed on hers. The hardest part wasn't the rehab, Marina continued. It was realizing that people looked at me differently, like I'd become a walking sad story, as if my only defining feature was the wheelchair. She sighed. That's why I test people now, to see if they can look past the obvious. And did I pass the test? Raphael asked. Marina smiled. You're still here, aren't you? The cafe manager began to circulate among the tables, a subtle signal that it was nearing closing time. Raphael glanced at his watch. More than 2 hours had passed. He had promised to stay for 1 hour. Theo was going to lose his mind when he found out. Marina took her coat from the back of the chair, and Raphael automatically stood to help her put it on. She accepted the help without comment, just a small nod of thanks. When they left the cafe, she unfolded the wheelchair with practical, efficient movements, transferring herself from the regular chair with an ease that spoke of years of practice. Outside, the night was cool, and the air smelled of pizza from the pizzeria on the corner. Raphael offered to push the chair, but Marina shook her head. I can manage, but you can help me with the curb up ahead. It's always a pain. Raphael helped her up the curb, his hands steady on the chair's handles. When they reached Marina's adapted car, she stopped and looked at him. Tomorrow morning, Central Park near the lake, 9 o'clock. You bring the coffee. Raphael felt a slow smile form on his face. Shouldn't it be unsweetened iced peach tea? Marina's eyes widened. How did you know? You mentioned it. When you were talking about your illustrations, you said you drink peach tea when you're drawing because coffee makes your hand shake. Marina was silent for a moment, then she shook her head with a smile. Impressive. All right, bring 2 unsweetened iced peach teas, and don't be late. Raphael watched as she got into the car and drove off, the taillights disappearing down Carmine Street. He stood there for another minute, hands in his pockets. a strange warmth still present in his chest. Then he started the walk back to his small apartment in Astoria, his mind already on the next day. Raphael woke at 6 on Sunday morning, 2 hours before he needed to. He lay in bed in his small apartment staring at the cracked ceiling, nervous in a way he hadn't been in years. Since when did a date make him feel like this? He was methodical, controlled, someone who measured twice before cutting the wood. But something about Marina had unsettled his internal order. He got up, took a long shower, and chose a light blue shirt that Theo had given him last Christmas, and that he had never worn. He went through the tiny kitchen, made a coffee he didn't drink, and finally left the house at 7:30. He stopped at a 24-hour diner on Broadway and ordered 2 unsweetened iced peach teas. The server looked at him curiously, but asked no questions. He arrived at Central Park at 8:15, too early. He sat on a bench near the entrance at 72nd Street, watching the morning runners go by in pairs or threes, their colorful sneakers hitting the pavement in a steady rhythm. The trees were still damp from the early morning drizzle, and the sky had that typical pale gray New York hue. Marina arrived at 9 o'clock sharp. Raphael saw her from a distance, maneuvering the wheelchair through the crowd with an ease that seemed almost natural. This chair was different from yesterday's, lighter, made of silver carbon fiber that gleamed in the diffuse morning light. She wore a moss-green sweatshirt and jeans, her hair loose and falling over her shoulders. "Punctual," Marina said as she approached him. She was smiling. "I like that." Raphael stood, offering one of the teas. Marina accepted it, taking a long sip before making a grimace of approval. "Perfect. You really were paying attention." "I always do," Raphael replied, and it wasn't a boast. It was simply who he was. Details mattered. They began to make their way through the park, Raphael walking beside her as Marina rolled along the path. There was no rush. The silence between them was comfortable, punctuated only by the sounds of the park waking up. Birds singing, children laughing in the distance, the rustle of leaves being swept by a park employee. "Look," Marina said suddenly, stopping near a kiosk. She pulled the tablet from the backpack hanging on her chair. "I did this while I was waiting for you to get here." It was a drawing of him. A caricature, really, but captured with such precision that Raphael almost laughed. There he was, sitting on the bench with a serious expression, holding 2 cups of tea as if they were precious artifacts. The lines were simple but expressive, each one telling a story. "You're fast," Raphael observed, genuinely impressed. "Years of practice," Marina replied, putting the tablet away. "When you spend enough time sitting, you learn to capture moments before they slip away." They continued walking, passing the lake where a few pedal boats were already beginning to circulate. Marina stopped now and then to take pictures with her phone, angles of trees, reflections on the water, a dog chasing a ball. "Reference for future drawings," she explained. It was Raphael who broke the comfortable silence this time. "And after?" he asked, his voice low. "After the accident, what was it like?" Marina was quiet for a while, her fingers drumming lightly on the side of her chair. "Most people ask about the before," she said, "as if the person I was before the accident is more interesting than the person I am now." "I'm not asking about the before," Raphael replied simply. Marina looked at him, something shifting in her expression. 2 years of rehab," she said finally. "Physical therapy 5 times a week. Doctors telling me what I'd never be able to do again. My family treating me like glass about to shatter. I got angry, really angry. I yelled at nurses, fought with my parents, stopped drawing because I couldn't hold a pencil without my left hand shaking." "And what changed?" Raphael asked. "One day," Marina continued, "a little girl in the hospital saw me sketching on my tablet. She had leukemia, was bald, weak, but her eyes lit up when she saw my drawings. She asked if I could draw a warrior princess in a wheelchair, said she'd never seen a story like that." She took another sip of her tea. "So I drew it, and I realized I had spent 4 years counting the days since the accident, 4 years measuring my life by what I had lost. I stopped counting after that. I started drawing again." They reached the rose garden, a quiet corner of the park where the flowers bloomed in shades of red, pink and white. Marina stopped, taking more pictures. Raphael watched as she adjusted angles, focusing on imperfect petals, crooked thorns. "Why the imperfect ones?" he asked. "Because real isn't pretty," Marina replied, without looking up from her phone. "Real is interesting. Perfection is boring. It's in the cracks that the light gets in." Raphael thought about that as he looked at a rose with petals nibbled by insects, yet still vibrant and alive. He had never thought about beauty that way. For him, construction was about perfection, exact measurements, right angles. But maybe Marina was right. Maybe the beauty was in the deviations. A small child, no more than 5, stopped near them and stared at Marina's chair with that unfiltered curiosity only children have. The mother quickly pulled the boy by the arm, muttering apologies as she dragged him away. Marina sighed, a tired expression crossing her face. "That's the worst part," she said. "It's not the physical barriers, it's not the sidewalks without ramps or the buildings without elevators. It's that, the apologies in people's eyes, as if my existence is an embarrassment." Raphael didn't know what to say for a moment. Then, without thinking too much, he replied, "I don't want to be another apology." Marina turned to look at him fully, her dark eyes studying every inch of his face. "What do you want to be, then?" "Someone who shows up," Raphael said. "Someone who brings iced peach tea and doesn't run away when things get complicated." A slow smile formed on Marina's lips. "Have things gotten complicated already?" Raphael shrugged. "Not yet, but they will. That's how it works, isn't it? Relationships are complicated." "Relationships," Marina repeated, testing the word. "Is that what we're having?" Raphael felt the heat rise up his neck again. "I don't know. But I'd like to find out." Marina was silent for so long that Raphael started to wonder if he'd said the wrong thing. Then she spoke. "Next Friday. There's a free concert near the lake. Live music. You bring the snacks and the blanket. I'll bring the company." Raphael nodded, a relieved smile escaping. "Deal." They continued through the park for another hour, talking about small things, the books they liked, the movies they hated, the best pizza in New York. Marina insisted it was in Carroll Gardens. Raphael defended Little Italy. They agreed to disagree. When they finally parted in the parking lot, Marina looked at him with a serious expression. "One thing, Raphael. If you're doing this out of pity, you can leave now. I don't need someone else treating me like a charity project." Raphael held her gaze steady. "I'm here because you're interesting, because your drawings are incredible, and you talk about life in a way that makes sense. Because I brought iced peach tea on a Sunday morning, and I don't regret it one bit. The wheelchair is part of who you are, but it's not all you are. And I want to get to know all of it." Marina blinked rapidly, as if fighting back tears. Then she nodded, not trusting her own voice. She got into her car and left, but not before glancing in the rearview mirror one last time. Raphael stood there, watching the car disappear, his hands in his pockets. His phone vibrated. It was a message from Marina. "Thanks for not treating me like a project. And thanks for not being a to-do list." Raphael smiled, typing back, "See you Friday." The reply came almost immediately, "See you Friday." He walked back to the subway station, the empty teacup in his hand, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, maybe. Or maybe it was just the feeling that something was beginning, something worth building slowly, carefully, like the wooden frames he assembled every day. Brick by brick, beam by beam, moment by moment. The week dragged on in a way few had in Raphael's life. Each day at the woodshop felt like it had 48 hours instead of 24. Theo noticed his distraction, making good-natured comments about the carpenter, finally finding something more interesting than right angles and support beams. Raphael ignored the teasing, but he couldn't hide the small smile that appeared every time his phone vibrated with a message from Marina. They texted throughout the week, nothing deep, just small fragments of their daily lives. Marina sent pictures of her works in progress, the big city fox gaining new backdrops and adventures. Raphael would reply with photos from the woodshop, structures taking shape under his hands. It was simple, but there was an intimacy in this exchange of worlds. On Thursday night, Marina sent, "Still coming tomorrow?" Raphael replied immediately, "Wouldn't miss it for anything." Her response took a few minutes. "Good, because I'm kind of nervous." Raphael stared at his phone screen for a long moment before typing, "Me too." Friday arrived with a clear sky and a pleasant temperature for June. Raphael left work early, ignoring Theo's knowing glance, and stopped at a market on Bleecker Street. He bought a baguette, cheese, salami, green grapes, and 2 small bottles of fresh orange juice. He also picked up a plaid blanket he saw in the housewares section, thinking it might get cool at night. He arrived at the park at 6 p.m. The concert was set to start at 7, but he wanted to secure a good spot. He found Marina already waiting near the lake, exactly where they had agreed. She was wearing a light summer dress, dark blue with small white flowers, and a denim jacket over her shoulders. Her hair was down, swaying slightly in the breeze coming off the lake. "You look beautiful," Raphael said, before he could think about whether he should or not. Marina smiled, a faint blush appearing on her cheeks. "And you came prepared," she noted, looking at the grocery bag and the folded blanket under his arm. "Let's find a spot before it gets crowded." They found a perfect spot on a gentle, grassy slope with a direct view of the makeshift stage set up near the lake's edge. Raphael spread out the blanket and helped Marina transfer from her chair, folding it and placing it beside them. Marina settled down with a sigh of satisfaction, stretching out her legs. "It's good to get out of the chair sometimes," she explained, when she noticed Raphael watching. "Even if my legs don't work, it's still comfortable to change positions. It makes the body remember it has other options." Raphael started taking things out of the bag, arranging them between them like a small feast. Marina picked up a grape, popping it into her mouth with an expression of approval. "You have a talent for picnics." "First time," Raphael admitted. "But I thought about what I'd want to eat if I were here." "And what do you like to eat?" Marina asked, her tone half playful. "Simple things," Raphael answered. "Good bread, better cheese, fresh fruit. Nothing too complicated." "Simple is underrated," Marina agreed. "People think sophistication has to be complicated, but sometimes the best things are the most direct." They ate as people began to arrive, filling the spaces around them with their own blankets and folding chairs. The stage was being prepped, musicians testing instruments, technicians adjusting microphones. The golden light of late afternoon painted everything with an almost unreal softness. "What do you think about?" Marina asked suddenly. "When you're alone, what does your mind chew on?" Raphael chewed on a piece of bread, considering the question. "About structures," he admitted, "about how things fit together, about the right way to build something that will last." He paused. "And lately about you." Marina fell quiet, her fingers playing with a loose thread on the blanket. "I think about what could have been," she said finally. "If that night had been different, if I'd left 5 minutes earlier or later, if the rain hadn't been so heavy." She sighed. "But then I realize that kind of thinking leads nowhere. What is, is. The only real choice is what to do from here." "And what do you choose?" Raphael asked. Marina looked at him, her eyes dark and serious. "I'm trying to choose to show up, to choose not to let fear make me disappear." The concert began with a soft melodic song, the singer's voice floating over the lake like a caress. Raphael and Marina sat in silence, listening, the distance between their bodies gradually shrinking until their shoulders were touching. When it got cooler, Raphael picked up Marina's jacket and draped it over her shoulders, his hands lingering a second longer than necessary. "Thank you," Marina murmured, and there was something in her voice that made Raphael's heart speed up. But then Raphael noticed it. A couple sitting, a little behind them staring, not with casual curiosity, but with that kind of prolonged gaze that comes loaded with judgment. The woman was whispering something to the man, her eyes flitting between Marina and the folded wheelchair beside her. The man nodded, his expression a mixture of pity and discomfort. Marina noticed too. Raphael saw the instantaneous shift in her posture, the way her shoulders stiffened, how her fingers clenched with a slight tension. The music continued, beautiful and melancholic, but something in the moment had been broken. "Marina," Raphael began quietly, but she was already moving. "That's enough," Marina said, her voice firm but low. "I need to go." "But the concert isn't even over," Raphael protested. "It doesn't matter." Marina was already transferring back into her chair, her movements abrupt and less coordinated than usual. "I'm sorry, I can't stay here right now." Raphael quickly gathered their things, folding the blanket and stuffing everything into the bag. They left before the first song had even finished, navigating through the other people who watched with curiosity. Marina kept her eyes fixed ahead, her jaw tight. In the parking lot, near Marina's adapted van, she finally stopped. "I'm sorry," she said without looking at Raphael. "I ruined it." "You didn't ruin anything." Raphael placed the bag on the ground, crouching down to be at her eye level. "Those people don't matter." "But they do." Marina looked at him finally, and there were tears in the corners of her eyes. "They always matter. Because no matter where I go, there's always someone staring, always someone making that face, as if I'm something that happened, not someone who exists." Raphael didn't know what to say. He wanted to promise that the world would be different, that people would stop staring, but it would be a lie, and they both knew it. So he said the only true thing he could think of: "You don't owe anyone a performance. You don't have to stay in places that make you feel like that. And anyone who can't see past the chair doesn't deserve your time." Marina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Why are you so—" She searched for the right word. "Constant?" "Because I'm a carpenter," Raphael replied with a small smile. "I build things to last. I don't give up when I find a knot in the wood." Marina laughed, a sound that was half sobbing, half relieved. "A knot in the wood, is that how you see me?" "I see you as someone interesting," Raphael corrected. "Someone who draws lonely foxes and understands that what's real is more interesting than what's perfect. The chair is just a detail in the construction." Marina reached out a hand, lightly touching Raphael's face. "Thank you. For today. For not making this a bigger deal than it needed to be." She got into her van and left, and Raphael stood there until the taillights disappeared into the night. He picked up his bag and started walking to the subway, a strange feeling in his chest, something between worry and hope. But the days that followed brought only silence. Marina didn't reply to Raphael's texts. She didn't answer his calls. It was as if she had simply vanished, leaving only the echo of that night in the park and the memory of her dark, tear-filled eyes. Raphael tried not to panic. Maybe she needed space. Maybe the night had been too much. But with each passing day of no response, the worry grew. He mentally replayed every moment of the concert, every word he had said, searching for the mistake that might have made Marina disappear. 10 days of absolute silence. Raphael counted each one as if it were an open wound that wouldn't heal. He worked at the woodshop with mechanical movements, measuring beams, cutting wood, assembling frames that didn't bring him the usual satisfaction. Theo tried to talk to him, to make jokes, to find out what had happened, but Raphael just answered in monosyllables and went back to work. During his breaks, he checked his phone compulsively. Nothing. The messages he'd sent were marked as read, but unanswered. His calls went straight to voicemail. It was as if Marina had simply evaporated from his existence, leaving only the ghost of shared conversations and moments. On the 5th night after the concert, Raphael was sitting at the small kitchen table in his apartment, pushing food around his plate without really eating. His gaze fell on a piece of scrap paper, a leftover from an architectural plan he had brought home. Without much thought, he picked up a pen and started to draw. It wasn't good. Raphael didn't have Marina's artistic talent. His lines were crooked, his proportions strange. But he drew anyway. The bench in the park where they had sat that first Sunday morning, the lake in the background, and a figure sitting there holding 2 cups. Marina, or at least a clumsy attempt to capture that moment. He looked at the drawing for a long time. It was ridiculous, amateurish, almost childlike, but it was honest. It was his way of saying what he couldn't put into words. "I remember. You matter. I'm still here." On the 10th day, Raphael woke up with a sudden determination. He took the drawing he had made, folded it. Carefully, and during his lunch break at the woodshop, he took a bus to Soho, where Marina lived. He had the address saved on his phone. She had mentioned it once when they were making plans. The building was old but well-maintained, with access ramps and wide doorways, clearly adapted for accessibility. Raphael stood on the sidewalk for a moment, questioning whether he was doing the right thing. Then, before he could change his mind, he walked to the mailboxes in the lobby and slid the folded paper into Marina's. No note, no explanation, just the drawing. He returned to the woodshop feeling strangely empty and full at the same time. He had done what he could. The ball was in Marina's court now. The next morning, a Saturday, Raphael was awakened by insistent knocking on his door. He stumbled to the entrance, still half asleep, and opened it to find a white envelope being slid underneath. He heard quick footsteps descending the stairs before he could see who it was. He picked up the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a drawing, but not just any drawing. It was professional, detailed, executed with the precision and talent of an experienced illustrator. The scene was the same one Raphael had tried to capture. The park bench, the lake, two figures. But in Marina's version, every detail was perfect. The trees had texture, the lake water reflected the sky, and the two figures on the bench were recognizable and human. Raphael turned the paper over. On the back, in careful cursive, was written, "People only draw what they don't want to forget. Thank you for drawing me when I had erased myself." He didn't think. He just threw on the first clothes he could find, put on his sneakers and ran. He ran through the still quiet streets of Saturday morning, crossed through Times Square, and entered Central Park at the nearest entrance. His lungs burned, his legs protested, but he didn't slow down until he reached the lake. And there she was. Marina was sitting under the same tree where they had met that first Sunday, the wheelchair beside her, the tablet in her lap, her eyes fixed on the surface of the lake. She didn't seem surprised when Raphael appeared, breathless and sweaty. "I knew you would come," she said calmly. Raphael approached slowly, as if she were a bird about to take flight. "You disappeared." "I know." Marina finally looked at him. "I'm sorry, I needed to think." Raphael sat on the ground next to her chair, his back against the tree. "For 10 days? I ran away," Marina admitted, her voice low. "That night at the concert, those people staring, it reminded me of everything I hate about being like this, and I got angry. At myself, mostly, because I had just told you that I choose to show up, and then at the first sign of trouble, I disappeared." Raphael waited, knowing there was more. "But I also ran away because," Marina hesitated, her hands tightening on the tablet, "because you actually see me. Not the chair, not the sad story. You see me. And that scared me more than any stranger's stare. Because if you really see me and still decide to leave, it's going to hurt a lot more." "I'm not going to leave," Raphael said simply. "You can't promise that," Marina shook her head. "No one can. Life changes. People change. You could wake up one day and realize that this," she gestured to herself, "is too much work, too much complication." Raphael was quiet for a moment, watching the ducks glide across the surface of the lake. Then he spoke. "When I build a frame, I know it's going to face storms, rain, wind, sometimes even small tremors. I don't build it thinking nothing will happen. I build it to withstand whatever comes." He looked at her. "I'm not here because I think it's going to be easy. I'm here because I think it's worth it." Marina blinked rapidly, tears threatening to fall. "How are you so—" She searched for the word. "Solid?" "I'm a carpenter," Raphael smiled slightly. "It comes with the territory." Marina laughed, a wet but genuine sound. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I drew you," she confessed. "Lots of drawings. During these 10 days, I draw when I need to process things." She swiped her fingers across the tablet screen, showing Raphael. There were at least a dozen drawings. Raphael on the park bench, Raphael smiling as he held 2 cups, Raphael looking at her with that serious, attentive expression. In one drawing, she had captured the moment he'd draped the jacket over her shoulders at the concert, every line conveying care and gentleness. And this one, Marina swiped to the last drawing, this is the one I was afraid to make real. In the drawing, they were walking together through the park. Raphael beside her, Marina in her chair, but there was no sadness or tension in the lines. There was just peace, companionship. Two people sharing a space, each whole on their own, but better together. It's beautiful, Raphael said honestly. It's terrifying, Marina corrected, because it means I have to choose to believe that someone can see me like this and stay. She paused. Do you think you can do that? Stay? Raphael thought carefully before answering. I'm not good at chasing, he admitted. I'm slow, methodical. I'm not going to run after you if you run away again. But I'm also not going to leave just because it gets hard. Maybe we can just be good at showing up. Just showing up consistently until it becomes a habit. Marina considered this, then nodded slowly. Just Saturdays, she said. Let's just try Saturdays. No labels, no promises we can't keep. Just showing up. On Saturdays. Just Saturdays, Raphael agreed. I can live with that. They stayed there for another hour talking about things big and small. Marina showed him more drawings, projects for new books. Raphael talked about a complicated frame he was building at the woodshop. When they finally got up to leave, Marina took Raphael's hand for a brief moment. Thank you, she said. For drawing, for remembering, for coming back. Always, Raphael replied. And so they established a new rhythm, a new way of being together. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't without fear, but it was honest. And maybe, Raphael thought as he walked beside Marina toward the park exit, honesty was a more solid foundation than perfection for building anything that would last. Saturdays became sacred. It didn't matter the weather, the mood, or the week's surprises. Every Saturday morning, Raphael showed up at the park with iced peach tea and something new from the Italian bakery on the corner of his street. Every Saturday morning, Marina arrived with her tablet and a smile that gradually lost the weight of hesitation. July and August brought the humid heat of a New York summer. Raphael started bringing lemonade instead of iced tea. Marina would show up with a handheld fan, laughing when Raphael complained that his fingers were too slick with sweat to get a good grip on his tools during the week. They sat on their usual bench, closer now out of a shared need for shade that soon became a choice. On one particularly hot Saturday, Marina showed Raphael the completed manuscript of her new children's book. The Fox in the Big City, she had titled it. It was the story of the fox who didn't fit in, who felt alone among the other animals, until it met a calm, methodical badger who built dens and didn't mind that the fox was different. It's about us, isn't it? Raphael asked, carefully turning the digital pages. Maybe, Marina smiled. Or maybe it's about anyone who's ever felt like an outsider and found someone who made them feel like they belonged. Is there a dedication? Raphael kept searching. Last page, Marina instructed, watching as he navigated to the end. There, in elegant, careful script, it read, For Raphael, who shows up, always. Raphael stared at the words for so long that Marina started to get nervous. Is it too much? She asked. I can change it if it's too much. It's perfect, Raphael said finally, his voice thick. You're perfect. Marina looked away, a blush rising on her cheeks despite the heat. No one's ever called me perfect before, especially not after the accident. Then people are blind, Raphael answered simply, or they don't know what to look for. And you do? Marina challenged him softly. I know what I see. Raphael handed the tablet back to her carefully. I see someone who turned pain into art, someone who could have given up but chose to keep going. Someone who teaches me every Saturday that strength has nothing to do with walking. Marina blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. You need to stop saying things like that or I'm going to cry in the middle of the park. Wouldn't be the first time, Raphael reminded her with a small smile. She laughed, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her t-shirt. True. I seem to cry a lot when I'm with you. Good tears? Raphael asked. The best, Marina confirmed. September came with slightly longer evenings and the first hint that summer was losing its grip. Raphael had caught a cold the week before, but he still showed up on Saturday, nose red and voice hoarse. Marina scolded him, saying he should be home resting, but her eyes shone with something Raphael was beginning to recognize as genuine affection. "You're stubborn," Marina accused, but offered him half of her light jacket anyway. "I'm consistent," Raphael corrected, immediately sneezing and ruining whatever dignity he was trying to maintain. They spent that Saturday in comfortable silence, Marina drawing while Raphael dozed with his head on her shoulder. When he woke up, there was a new drawing on her tablet, him sleeping, his expression softened by sleep, vulnerable in a way he never was when awake. "Can I keep this one?" Raphael asked. "It's already yours," Marina replied. "Everything I draw of you is yours." Raphael studied the drawing more closely. She had captured not just his physical appearance, but something deeper. The way his eyebrows relaxed in sleep, the slight curve of his lips as if he were dreaming of something good. "Is this how you see me?" he asked. "It's how you are when you're not trying to be strong for everyone," Marina answered softly. "When you just are." October brought the promise of autumn. The park's trees began to sport fiery leaves and the gardens exploded in color after the green months of summer. Marina was excited because her book had been accepted by a major publisher. Raphael brought a small cake from the bakery to celebrate, candles and all. They celebrated right there, on the park bench, with Marina blowing out the candles as a few curious passers-by watched, and some even clapped. Raphael noticed that Marina no longer flinched when people looked. She simply existed, taking up her space in the world with a growing confidence. "You know what I've realized?" Marina said as they ate the cake with their hands, no plates or forks. "I've stopped measuring time in before and after the accident. Now I measure it in Saturdays. How many Saturdays since we met? How many Saturdays until I can hold my printed book in my hands?" "How many is that?" Raphael asked. She thought for a moment. 18 Saturdays since we met, and maybe 30 more until the book is published." She licked frosting from her fingers. "That's a lot of Saturdays ahead." "All of them with you," Raphael promised. And this time it didn't sound scary. It sounded right. An elderly couple walked past them, hand in hand, and the woman smiled at Marina with genuine warmth. "Congratulations, dear," she said, and Marina answered with a radiant smile. Raphael watched the exchange, realizing how Marina's world had expanded, how she no longer saw every glance as a judgment. November was the month of rain. They had to take shelter under a picnic pavilion for 3 consecutive Saturdays, listening to the drumming of water on the metal roof as they talked about everything and nothing. It was there, protected from the storm outside, that Marina rested her head on Raphael's shoulder for the first time without hesitation, without fear. "You're warm," she murmured. "You're freezing," Raphael replied, taking off his jacket and putting it over her shoulders. "You need to start dressing better for the weather." "Or you could just keep warming me up," Marina suggested, with a mischievous smile that made something heat up in Raphael's chest. "I can do that," he agreed, putting an arm around her and pulling her closer. Marina snuggled against him, and Raphael felt the weight of her leaning on his chest, the implicit trust in the gesture. They stayed like that as the rain fell outside, creating a silver curtain that isolated them from the rest of the world. Raphael thought he could stay like this forever, in this little refuge with Marina safe in his arms. "Do you ever regret it?" Marina asked suddenly, her voice almost muffled by the sound of the rain. "Regret what?" "Me. This. Agreeing to that blind date." Raphael thought carefully before answering. "I regret every Saturday I didn't know you before," he said finally. "Every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Every day of my life before you showed up in it." Marina lifted her head to look at him, her eyes bright. That was surprisingly poetic for a carpenter. "Even carpenters have their moments," Raphael shrugged, but he was smiling. December brought a sudden cold snap that caught everyone by surprise. New York decided to skip the mild autumn and dive straight into winter. Raphael switched back to bringing hot chocolate, and Marina wore thick sweaters that hid the scar at the base of her spine, the permanent physical mark of the accident. She didn't hide it anymore. On one particularly cold Saturday, Marina did something unexpected. She pulled a key from her bag and offered it to Raphael. "What's this for?" he asked, though he already suspected. "My apartment," Marina said casually, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. "So you can put the tea in the fridge when you get here early. Or grab a book I forgot. Or—" she shrugged. "To show up, even when it's not Saturday if you want to." Raphael took the key, feeling its small but significant weight in his palm. "I can show up on other days?" "You can show up whenever you want," Marina replied. "Just don't disappear, okay?" "Never," Raphael promised, putting the key in his pocket where it would be close to his heart. Marina looked at him for a long moment. "I'm giving you this because I trust you. Not just to come into my apartment, but to come into my life for real. No reservations. No safety net of weekly dates." She took a deep breath. "It's scary." "I know," Raphael took her hand. "But we'll do it the way we do everything. Slowly. One step at a time." January of 2025 brought the height of winter. The park was quiet on weekends, families staying indoors, runners bundled up against the biting wind. Raphael and Marina found new quiet spots, less exposed places where they could have their private moments amidst the public emptiness. It was in January that Raphael used the key for the first time. He had finished work early on a Friday and decided to make dinner at Marina's apartment, a surprise for when she got back from a meeting with her publisher. He cooked pasta with a homemade tomato sauce, simple but made with care, and set the table with candles he found in a cabinet. Marina came home to find Raphael in the kitchen, stirring the sauce, and simply stopped at the door. "You're here," she said, and there was wonder in her voice. "I'm here," Raphael confirmed. "Is this okay?" Marina rolled over to him, took his hand, and pulled him down until their faces were level. Then, for the first time, she kissed him. It was soft, hesitant, loaded with all the months of slow building and consistent showing up. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. "More than okay," Marina murmured. "It's perfect." They ate dinner by candlelight, talking about the months ahead. Marina's book was due to be released in March. Raphael had a big project at the woodshop that would keep him busy for weeks. But there would always be Saturdays. There would always be the park. There would always be them showing up for each other, building something solid on the foundation of honesty and mutual care they had established. After dinner, Marina showed Raphael the apartment properly. He already knew the kitchen and living room, but she took him to the studio where she worked. The walls were covered with drawings, sketches, illustrations in various stages of completion. Raphael recognized the fox in many of them, but he also saw other characters, other stories. "This is my world," Marina said, gesturing around. "This is where I spend most of my time when I'm not with you." "It's beautiful," Raphael observed genuinely. "How your mind works." "Chaotic," Marina suggested with a smile. "Creative," Raphael corrected. "And absolutely fascinating." Marina pointed to a specific wall where there was a series of drawings of Raphael. Him in various moments, various expressions, various angles. "This is my private collection," she admitted. "My Raphael series, not for publication, just for me." Raphael stepped closer, studying each drawing. He saw himself through her eyes, captured in moments he didn't even know he was being watched. "You draw me a lot," he observed. "I draw what I love," Marina said simply, and the weight of those words filled the space between them. August of 2025 arrived with a golden light that transformed Central Park into an impressionist painting. Raphael was lying on the grass, his eyes closed, feeling the sun warm his face as he listened to the familiar sound of Marina's stylus gliding across her tablet. It was a perfect Saturday, the kind that had become the norm rather than the exception in their lives. 38 Saturdays. 38 Saturdays had passed since that first awkward date at the cafe. Raphael knew because Marina kept a count in a special notebook, decorated with drawings of the two of them over time. Each Saturday was a small illustration, a captured moment. Raphael bringing hot chocolate in the winter, the two of them sheltering from the rain, Marina blowing out the candles on the impromptu cake, the first kiss in the kitchen. "You're thinking loudly again," Marina commented without looking up from her tablet. Raphael opened one eye. "I'm not talking." "But you're thinking so hard I can hear it," she smiled. "What is it this time? Right angles, support beams, the ideal density of pine wood?" "About us," Raphael admitted. "About how we got here." Marina finally stopped drawing, saving her work before setting the tablet aside. She turned in her chair to face him fully. "That's a dangerously romantic answer coming from you, Mr. Carpenter." Raphael sat up, crossing his legs and facing her. "I can be called romantic now. I have enough proof that I'm not as slow as Theo always said." Marina laughed, the sound Raphael had learned to love more than any music. "Theo still thanks me every time he sees me at the woodshop. Says I work miracles." "You do," Raphael said seriously. "Just not in the way he thinks." Marina tilted her head, curious. "How so?" "You taught me that building something that lasts isn't about perfection." Raphael chose his words carefully. "It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard. It's about finding beauty in the cracks. It's about," he gestured vaguely, "about this being enough." "This?" Marina gestured between them. An introverted carpenter and a stubborn illustrator in a wheelchair having weekly picnics in the park. "Exactly this," Raphael confirmed. "Simple, consistent, real." Marina was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming, lightly on the arm of her chair in the way she did when she was processing something deep. The sun continued its slow arc across the sky, casting long shadows from the trees. A group of children ran past chasing a red kite, their laughter echoing across the open space. "You know what I was afraid of?" Marina finally broke the silence. "Back at the beginning?" Raphael waited, knowing she needed the quiet to continue. "I was afraid this was temporary," Marina continued, "that you were going to realize it was too much work, too complicated, that you'd wake up one day and think you could have someone easier without all this baggage." She touched her chair lightly. "Without all this extra equipment." "And now?" Raphael asked softly. "Now I know you're too stubborn to give up." Marina smiled, but there were tears in the corners of her eyes. "And that stubborn is just another word for faithful when it's applied the right way." Raphael moved closer, kneeling on the grass beside her chair. He took both of Marina's hands in his, feeling the familiar warmth of her skin, the subtle difference in strength between her right and left hand that he had come to know so well. "You think that's it? What we're building here?" Marina took his face in her hands, forcing him to look directly into her eyes. "I think we're building a life," she said. "Slowly, consistently, one Saturday at a time. And maybe that's what love is. Not fireworks and grand gestures, but showing up repeatedly, choosing the same person again and again." Raphael covered her hands with his. "Then I choose you, again, like I do every Saturday." "And I choose you," Marina blinked, letting a tear fall. "Even when I'm scared, even when I want to run, I choose to show up." They stayed like that for a long moment, the park continuing around them, life happening in every direction. But in that small, sacred space, there was only the two of them and the silent promise of more Saturdays to come. Raphael wiped the tear from Marina's face with his thumb, a gesture so gentle and natural it felt like he had done it 1,000 times before. "You know what Theo told me last week?" Raphael said. "He said he's never seen me build anything with as much care as I build the time I spend with you. That each of our dates is like I'm assembling the most important frame of my life." "And is he right?" Marina asked. "Completely," Raphael admitted. "Because that's exactly what I'm doing. Building something that needs to last. Because I can't imagine my life without these Saturdays now. Without you." Marina pulled her tablet back, her fingers already moving in precise strokes. "I'm drawing this," she announced. "This exact moment." "Is it going in the Saturday notebook?" Raphael asked, lying back down on the grass, his head now resting near her chair, close enough to touch. "It is," Marina confirmed. Saturday 38. The day we stopped being afraid of what this is and just started to be. Raphael closed his eyes again, letting the sun warm his face. He could hear the soft scratching of the stylus, the distant murmur of other people in the park, the chirping of birds in the trees above them. It was peace, it was whole, it was enough. A gentle breeze passed over them, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and the flowers from the nearby garden. Raphael took a deep breath, memorizing this moment, knowing it would be one he would revisit in his mind on difficult days. The kind of memory that sustains a person when life gets complicated. After a while, Marina spoke again. "Raphael? Do you really think this is it? This is enough for you?" Raphael opened his eyes, turning his head to look at her. Marina was watching him with that vulnerable expression she rarely showed, the confident artist temporarily replaced by the woman who still carried invisible wounds from the past. Raphael sat up again, taking her free hand, the one not holding the stylus. "Let me tell you something. About construction," he began. "When you build a house, you can add fancy porches, huge windows, expensive finishes. But in the end, what matters is the frame. It's the foundation. It's the skeleton that keeps everything standing when the storms come." He squeezed her hand gently. "You're my frame, Marina. Everything else is just decoration." Marina let out a tearful laugh. "You just compared me to wooden beams." "The strongest I know," Raphael smiled. "And the most beautiful, too." She shook her head, but she was smiling. "How am I supposed to draw that in a children's book? The fox telling the badger he's her support structure." "I'm sure you'll find a way," Raphael said. "You always do." Marina returned to her drawing, but now there was a lightness in her movements that wasn't there before. Raphael watched for a few minutes, then pulled his own notebook from the backpack he always brought. He had started drawing too, nothing compared to Marina's talent, but she said she liked his drawings precisely because they were honest and unpretentious. He began to sketch the tree they were under, trying to capture the way the light filtered through the leaves. It wasn't perfect. The lines were crooked and the proportions strange, but there was something true about it. Each jagged line was a declaration that he was trying, that he cared enough to try to capture this moment in his own way. "Can I see?" Marina asked after a while. Raphael hesitated, then handed her the notebook. Marina studied the drawing for a long moment, her eyes tracing each uneven line. "You know what I love about this?" she said finally. "That you don't try to make it look like something else. It's exactly what it is, no apologies." She looked at him with intensity. "Like you." Raphael felt the heat rise up his neck, but he didn't look away. "I learned from the best." They spent the rest of the afternoon there, each drawing, occasionally showing each other their creations, exchanging soft comments and comfortable silences. Raphael noticed how Marina's fingers moved with more confidence now, how she no longer hesitated when holding the stylus, how the difference between her hands had become just another part of her, instead of a limitation. "You know what I realized?" Raphael said suddenly. Marina looked up at him, waiting. "You don't hide anymore. Your hand, your scars, the chair. Before, you always positioned things in a certain way. You were always conscious of how others saw you. But now," he gestured vaguely, "now you just exist." Marina considered this, looking at her own hands. "I think it was you," she admitted, "the way you never made it a big deal. You never pretended it wasn't there, but you also never let it be the only thing you saw. Eventually, I started to see myself through your eyes. And in those eyes, I'm just Marina. Complete. Whole. Because you are," Raphael said simply. "You always were." When the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Marina saved her final work and turned the tablet to Raphael. It was a drawing of the two of them, exactly as they were in that moment. Raphael lying on the grass, Marina in her chair beside him, the tree above them, the lake in the background. But what captured the essence of the drawing wasn't the technical details, however perfect they were. It was the feeling it conveyed. Peace. Belonging. Home. "It's perfect," Raphael said, And this time he wasn't just talking about the drawing. "It's real," Marina corrected, "and real is always better than perfect." Raphael studied the drawing more closely, noticing little details Marina had included, the way his hand rested near the wheel of her chair, not holding, just near. The angle of her head tilted slightly toward him, the two iced peach teas placed between them, a ritual that had become their private symbol. "Are you going to publish this one?" Raphael asked. "No," Marina shook her head. "This one's just ours. Some things are too important to share with the world. They need to be kept safe, protected, just for us." They began to gather their things, the familiar late afternoon ritual. Raphael folded the blanket while Marina packed away her tablet. He helped her adjust the backpack on the back of her chair, their movements synchronized by months of practice. There was a choreography to them now, a silent dance of help and acceptance that needed no words. "Next Saturday?" Raphael asked, even though he knew the answer. "Next Saturday," Marina confirmed. "Always." But before they started to move, Marina held Raphael's arm. "Wait. There's something I need to tell you." Raphael felt a tightness in his chest, the sudden way his heart sped up. "What?" Marina took a deep breath. "My publisher wants to do a launch tour for the book. 5 cities, 3 weeks, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle." "That's incredible," Raphael said, genuinely happy for her. "Your book deserves it." "It means I'm going to miss 3 Saturdays, Marina continued, her voice small. 3 Saturdays without showing up, without being here, without you." Raphael knelt beside her again. 3 Saturdays is a long time, he admitted, but it's for your dream, for everything you've worked to achieve. I'll wait. I'll always wait. "What if you get used to not having these Saturdays?" Marina voiced her fear. "What if you realize it's easier without all this commitment?" Raphael took her face in his hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "Listen to me carefully. 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. It doesn't matter. You're my frame, remember? And frames don't fall apart just because you spend some time away from them. They stand firm, waiting for you to come home." Marina closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. "Then I'll go. I'll do the tour. And I'll be here every Saturday," Raphael said. "On our bench, with iced peach tea, even if you're not. Because that's what we do. We show up." Marina opened her eyes, and there was determination in them now, mixed with love. "You're impossible. You know that." "I'm consistent," Raphael corrected with a smile. "I told you it comes with the territory of being a carpenter." They began to walk toward the park exit, Raphael beside Marina, as she maneuvered her chair along the familiar path. The park was starting to empty, families returning home, runners finishing their last laps. But Raphael and Marina were in no hurry. They were never in a hurry on Saturdays. "You know," Marina said as they stopped to watch the sunset over the lake one last time, "I used to think my life ended that night 4 years ago, that everything I would be from then on would be defined by what I had lost." "And now?" Raphael asked softly. "Now I know my life was just waiting to really begin." Marina looked at him, her eyes shining in the golden twilight. "It was waiting for someone who would see all the parts of me, the broken and the whole, and say that this is exactly enough." Raphael took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "It was always enough. You were always enough." They stood there until the last ray of sun disappeared behind the distant New York skyline, watching as the sky transitioned from gold to purple to deep blue. It was one of those moments Raphael knew he would remember forever, imprinted on his memory with crystal clarity. In Marina's car, before they said goodbye, she held Raphael's hand for another moment. 38 Saturdays, she said, and an infinite number to go. "An infinite number," Raphael agreed. 1 at a time. Marina hesitated, then spoke. "When I'm away, will you really come here? Alone?" "I will," Raphael promised, "because this is our place. And as long as I'm here, you'll be here with me in a way. In every tree you drew, every bench we sat on, every memory we made." "Will you send me pictures?" Marina asked, her voice vulnerable. "Every week," Raphael promised, "of our bench, our lake, and the peach tea I'll be drinking while thinking of you." Marina pulled him in for a kiss long and deep, filled with promise and anticipated longing. When they parted, they both had tears in their eyes. 3 weeks will go by fast, she lied. It'll feel like an eternity, Raphael was honest, but I'll be here when you get back. Same place, same tea, waiting for the same incredible person who has been a part of my every Saturday for 38 weeks. He watched as she drove out of the parking lot, waving one last time before she turned the corner. Then he began his own walk to the subway, hands in his pockets, a small but permanent smile on his face despite the sadness that was already beginning to set in. On Monday, when he arrived at the woodshop, Theo immediately noticed something different. "You're different," he accused. "What happened?" Raphael just smiled, picking up his tools and starting to measure a beam. "Nothing," he said. "Just another perfect Saturday." "It wasn't nothing," Theo insisted. "You're glowing, man. It's almost annoying." Raphael laughed, the sound surprising them both. "Marina's going away for 3 weeks, book tour." "And you're happy about that?" Theo looked confused. "I'm proud," Raphael corrected. "And yes, I'll miss the Saturdays. But she's achieving her dreams. How could I not be happy?" Theo shook his head in admiration. "You've really changed, you know. The Raphael from a year ago would never have said something like that." "The Raphael from a year ago didn't know Marina," Raphael replied simply, turning back to his work. And as he worked, building frames that would last for decades, Raphael thought of Marina drawing in her studio, capturing moments that would last forever, each building in their own way, each creating something solid and beautiful and real, separated by distance for the next few weeks, but united by something much stronger than physical proximity. 38 Saturdays and a whole life still to come, one date at a time. And if the next 3 Saturdays would be lonely, they would also be a test. Proof that what they had built was strong enough to withstand the distance, patient enough to wait, and real enough to last. Raphael smiled to himself as he marked measurements on the wood, already counting the days until Saturday number 39, when Marina would be back and they would begin their ritual again, stronger for having proven that showing up wasn't about being physically present, but about holding a space in your heart, always.